Well, for 2 years, they told you that Robert Mueller was a moral hero. Questioning any part of his investigation amounted to a betrayal of this country. Firing him would be treason. The only real question about Robert Mueller was where on the National Mall to put his statue. Everyone agreed it should be at least as big as Lincoln's. And then on Sunday, Mueller dashed their dreams. After conducting the most thorough investigation in recent American history, he concluded that there was no collusion between the Trump campaign and the government of Russia. For the left, this was disastrous news. This was the political equivalent of a stock market crash, literally. Ratings on CNN and MSNBC plummeted immediately, in some cases by more than 50%. They'd promised their audience a conspiracy. When the conspiracy evaporated, so did their viewers. Democratic office holders faced a similar problem. What do you say to the mob on Twitter that secretly believes that Trump speaks Russian? Tough question. So they decided to say nothing. Just pretend that nothing has changed. Watch Senator Cory Booker explain that indeed the conspiracy continues, complex and diabolical as ever, only now the newly installed Attorney General is part of the conspiracy too.
Bob Mueller did not find a chargeable collusion conspiracy. Here's how you described it as recently as 2017.
There continues to seem to be smoke that might result in an actual fire. In other words, real collusion going on between us and the Soviet Union.
Real collusion going on, you said. Do you now have to revise that to say not chargeable collusion?
Again, when I have an attorney general who, in my opinion, is suspect, filtering a report that I have not seen, I'm not willing to conclude anything yet.
Yeah. They don't trust Barr. Congressman Eric Swalwell is less creative than that. Swalwell doesn't have a clever new theory about Russia or really about anything. He likes his old theories just fine. They've worked for him. He doesn't want to hear about any of your evidence or facts. He likes the world as it was last week. Don't bother arguing with him. If you don't like it, you can go ahead and sue.
I stand by what I have said about seeing evidence of collusion, and if he has a problem with that, he can sue me. And I promise you I would win in court.
Go ahead and sue. Over on CNN, there was near panic at the news. Let's say you'd spent decades claiming to be the most trusted name in news, and then it turned out you were way less reliable than Alex Jones, who, by the way, you'd single-handedly forced off the air, hilariously on the grounds he was too inaccurate to be heard by the American public. You'd be pretty worried all of a sudden. You wouldn't want to apologize because that would be the same as acknowledging your fraud. So you just keep lying. Watch the governor's brother do just that.
You guys
Yes.
on this network
What have I done?
have tortured this man for 2 years with collusion, and nobody's apologized.
First of all,
to him. So before we talk about obstruction, apologize for the overreaction of collusion.
Not a chance.
Well, of course you're not.
Not a chance.
Of course you're not, because you're not being fair.
No.
Apologize.
Never. Here's my case.
Never?
Never. I didn't do anything wrong. These questions are real.
Well,
they needed to be regarded as such.
Apologize? Apologizing never even occurred to Don Lemon. Mr. Lemon is a very busy man. He didn't have time to read the entire summary of the Mueller report. He's got people for that. But from the back of his Maybach, heading home from dinner, he glanced at his device and saw a line from it posted on Instagram. That was enough. Don Lemon knows what he knows.
Barr quotes him saying, while this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. It also does not exonerate him. And it also does not exonerate him. And it also does not exonerate him.
It also does not exonerate him. Well, that may be true, but at this point, Donald Trump isn't really the one who needs to be exonerated. John Kiriakou is a former CIA officer, and he joins us tonight. John, thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
You worked at CIA for a long time under John Brennan, who ultimately backed your prosecution, for which you were sent to prison for a crime that I don't think would be considered a crime today. So tell me, with that perspective, your reaction to watching John Brennan trotted out before the cameras daily almost for the last 2 years as an expert on the Russia conspiracy.
I think this was scandalous for a number of reasons, the most important of which is that John Brennan has repeatedly used the word treason, the word traitor, when describing the president. Treason is a death penalty charge. Is he seriously saying, or has he been saying, that the president ought to be executed for something having to do with a scandal that really never existed? To me, John Brennan just simply is not a serious person. He shouldn't be taken seriously by us or by anybody else. And I'm going to get a little bit personal here, too. I worked with John Brennan for many, many years. I always thought that he was in over his head intellectually, and I think he's proven that repeatedly in his responses and reactions to the news coming out of this investigation.
It's funny you said that. I think the default assumption for most people, including me, is that the director of the CIA is a very smart man.
The best and the brightest.
It's a very complex job.
It is.
I've watched him closely in his public performances over the past couple of years, and I've concluded that he's not very bright. I'm not attacking him.
No.
It's okay.
That's an observation.
But it's clearly the case. How does a guy like that run the CIA? How do you get that job?
You get that job by latching on to George Tenet before George Tenet even entered the CIA. John Brennan in the 1990s was George Tenet's briefer when George was at the National Security Council as the director of intelligence programs. And so when George became the deputy director of the CIA, he took John over with him and then just promoted him through the ranks until he was practically cabinet level. I mean, that's how senior
So just pure
he became.
cronyism is what
That's
you're saying.
all it was, and it took less than a decade. He was on a rocket ride to the top of his career track at the CIA.
So now I guess the results of all of this stuff that we've watched for a couple of years is that the ordinary person, me, everyone else, knows that these agencies are run by people who are much less impressive than we thought, with political agendas, and in some cases are ruthless and cruel. You're one of the people who felt the sting of that. You went to prison.
I did,
for it.
thanks to John Brennan.
Guys like Roger Stone are headed to prison because of that. Where are the pardons here? I mean, is it time for the executive branch to send a really clear message? We're going to stop the destruction of innocent people by completely out of control bureaucrats.
I think it is the time for pardons. I heard Senator Lindsey Graham say earlier today that pardons probably would not be met very well right now in the United States Senate. I think he's wrong. I think that the American people understand that people have been wronged. Look at Mike Flynn. What that poor guy has gone through. Look at Roger Stone. You know, these are all process felonies, Tucker. We talked about this once before. These are felonies that really didn't exist until these people were thrown into this investigation.
That's exactly right.
They're crimes that would never have been committed otherwise. Since the investigation has come to naught, I think it's time to wipe the slate clean.
And by the way, it doesn't make sense not to pardon people.
I agree.
You think this is a scam and a hoax, and the people in charge
Wipe the
are
slate
illegitimate, then you have an obligation to make it right by pardoning the people who are wronged. And I hope you're on that list.
Thank you so much.
Great to see you tonight. Thank you.
The pleasure's always mine.
Thank you. Sean Davis.